I think I'm live. I don't know. This is the first time I've broadcasted on YouTube, so let's, oops. I keep hitting this because I talk with my hands. I've got to get used to not hitting it. Okay, so we are editing. I just finished recording a little while ago before lunch, Untouchable Chapter 2. So now I'm editing, and yeah, so that's what we're doing now. I'm going to mute the microphone. I'm still learning how to stream to YouTube with OBS because I am using OBS. So we'll have to see how things go there. I can close this. I can close this. I think I can close this. I'm going to go to my YouTube channel and see. We'll just see if I can see my live. I can see it there, so I don't have to have this thing open. This, I can close this. Yep, okay. Camera looks okay. It's not too big. Good to go. Actually, I think I don't even have to have that open, but I'm going to leave it there. Kind of move things around so that I can see chat on my first monitor. So, Audition is on my middle monitor, and then I have script on my right monitor. When I'm reading, I'll have script on this monitor because my mic is right here. Yeah, so we can get right into editing. Please feel free to, if you're watching this after the broadcast, if you have any input, feedback, anything like that that is constructive and related to the topic that we are discussing, then please feel free to leave it in the chat below. I would love to hear from you. I am new to this. The first book in this series was the first book that I have ever done. I learned a lot through the entire process. There we go again. I learned a lot through the entire process of producing the first in the series of books. This is the second, and I'm having so much fun with it. The author, M.K. Chester, is amazing to work with. She is cool as hell. I have a potty mouth, by the way, so you're probably going to hear it every now and then, along with me getting fits of giggles, because that's been done before, too. You can check my TikTok for that. And that is not in the description anywhere. There's a lot of things that I need to do. I'm still just getting started. I need to rebuild my Fiverr gigs and all of that stuff. But I will get to that this week since I'm suspended from my day job because I made a mistake. But anyways, I feel like I've gotten in trouble like a child that has had their toy taken away. Except in this case, it's my paycheck for a week. But on to other things. Let's get right back into editing. So what I do, I use the clicker method. Sorry, I know that just like maxed out and I probably just blew your earbuds. I'm so sorry. Anyways, I use a clicker when I'm recording. I'm not good at punch and roll because I feel like I have a harder time. I don't know how to punch and roll with Audition. I could do it easily with Audacity when I was using Audacity, and that's what I started with. And then I switched to Reaper. And then when I saw how easy editing in Audition was, I immediately started paying for Audition. I was going to wait until I built up, some income from work, doing audiobooks and other jobs, which I am doing. I've gotten quite a bit of work from Upwork. I haven't gotten anything from Fiverr with the new algorithm, but I think I can help myself by rebuilding that and branching out and doing different gigs instead of having one gig that's all encompassing. I'm going to set up and have different gigs for different things, like IVR systems. I'm going to have one gig for that, and one gig for audiobooks, and one gig for video voiceover and things like that. So that's the goal for this week while I have a lot of time on my hands. Anyways, let's get right back into editing. I'm going to be facing that way because that's where my work is, but I'm going to try to keep on an eye on chat, which is right there at the edge of that monitor. Like I have it. See it right there? But anyways, here we go. Like making sausage backward. So what I like to do is all of these tall lines here, these are clicks that I've done with a clicker. And that's why I use it. That way I can easily find the spots that need to be edited, that need to have bits deleted. I've also, when I couldn't find my clicker for a while because I have a cat that likes to play with things, I was also using the marker, which has a hotkey in Audition, which is M, and when you hit it, it just puts the marker up there. You can change the name or anything like that, and I will sometimes use that, like I did in my Twitch broadcast, to mark where I need to re-record something because it just doesn't sound quite right. And what I will, no, I did not mean to, I'm not sure what that was. I'm going to go ahead and delete this one. But I can change the name of it to say, hey, re-record this section, or re-record this line, or whatever. But I will probably just go ahead and do that right here on stream. You will see me getting in and out of the sweater quite a bit because I have to turn my heater off so that I can hear, and it's cold in Michigan right now. That was the last of my coffee. I should have made another cup before I got started. That's okay, because I have my water. Stay hydrated, folks. It's important. Yeah. So anyway, what I like to do first, before I go through and look for any audible clicks or pops or mouth noises that need to be removed, is I go through and I go ahead and delete the parts that need to be deleted. That way I can just listen to the entire thing. And you will often see me closing my eyes because I find that depriving myself of that one sensory input, I can pick up those noises more easily. So that's just something that you're going to see probably. But anyway, let's get right into it. His injuries had been brutal, like some wild beast. His injuries had been brutal, like some. So then I'll just delete this part. Injuries had been brutal, like some wild beast. So this is way too loud compared to the volume of the things around it. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it down a little bit, and we'll see how that sounds. His injuries had been brutal, like some wild beast. It's still a little loud. His injuries had been brutal, like some wild beast had mistaken him for breakfast. That's better. So that's what I'll do. When I speak to you, I will do my best to look at you. It's hard not to, considering there are googly eyes on my camera. So I'm looking you in the eyes. Anyways, she dragged her wrist across. What's the mess up here? She dragged her wrist across her brow. Across her brow. It's across. The word is across. She dragged her wrist across her brow. And so then I will just go ahead and skip forward. Who on earth wanted her on a Sunday? Who on earth wanted her on a Sunday? Who on earth wanted her on a Sunday? The chair and covered the stain, kind of. Who on earth wanted her on a Sunday? Who on earth wanted her on a Sunday? Who on earth wanted her on a Sunday? See, I like this better. The determination and... So I'm just going to go ahead and delete. Let me listen again. Who on earth wanted her on a Sunday? And there's my heater. Who on earth wanted her on a Sunday? Who on earth wanted her on a Sunday? So this gets so much, I mean, maybe if I turn it down. Who on earth wanted her on a Sunday? Who on earth wanted her on a Sunday? Back of the chair and covered the stain, kind of. Who on earth wanted her on a Sunday? Okay, yep, that's better. So that's what we'll do. The first one wasn't as articulate as the second, and that's why I re-recorded it, because I try to listen to myself as I'm recording. You know, it is what it is. Trying to work things out and get an idea of what's going on. Oh, you know what? I need to... we're going to do a little TikTok. Because we can, to let people know that we are live. No, I don't want to listen. I want to make. I want to make. I want to make. Excuse me. I want to make. Oh, there we are. Nope. Nope. Not doing the wanted thing. No. Can we go? I don't want that. Why is that a thing? I don't want that. Is there something else that I can do? Can I do this? What is this? What is that? Oh gosh, no. What is? Okay, that's kind of cool. I'm just I got sucked into a rabbit hole. I hate it when that happens. Oh, I don't want that. I'm sitting here futzing with filters. I don't want filters. Can I just have my face? I don't need that. Why? Why is there I don't want that sound. Discard it. I don't want that. I don't know why it's doing that. I have to hold my arm up. I'm tired. I don't want that. And I don't want that. Thank you. Okay, so we are live over on YouTube at the channel is Christy Lynn VO, just like here on TikTok. And if I can, hang on. There we go. So we are working on Untouchable Chapter 2. Yes, that is the top of my water bottle and my messy desk. So come on over and hang out with me while I edit. This should be fun. Okay, so we are live over on YouTube at the channel. Let's set some tags and things because I'm not very good at social media. And I'm learning. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to be more diligent about promoting myself. And so promotion is not easy for me either because I'm a little bit of an introvert. So putting myself out there and all of that. It may not seem like it because I'm talking to you now, but I'm literally in a room by myself talking to a camera that has googly eyes on it. So yeah, it's not quite the same as being in a room full of people. It's more like I'm talking to myself. Let's see. Live on YouTube. Exclamation point. Hashtag audiobook. Hashtag voice actor. Oh, I forgot to put that one in the stream thing. Okay. Hashtag audiobook narrator. Can I do more? Can I like make a hashtag with the author's name? Okay. I think I'm going to do that. Hashtag MK Chester. Yay.
Okay, so this news came out like a week ago. I heard about it, didn't make a video.
Oh, stop asking me to like connect shit to Facebook because I'm not doing it. No. Not gonna lie, even though, you know, the whole this stuff is new. Is it done? Yes, it's on. It's there. There. We're on TikTok now. All right. Sorry, y'all. My ear itches so bad. I find that scratch the like my ear. I don't do it with my fingers. I do it with a Q-tip. It doesn't go in my ear. I promise. You're not supposed to. Do you know they say you're not supposed to put anything larger than your elbow in your ear? In other words, don't push it in your ear. Okay, back to editing. A man she judged. A man she judged. His emotions. A man she judged. His emotions. A blue-clad. She cracked the door. A man she judged. Force as she moved forward. A man she judged as she moved forward. A man she judged. His emotions. A man. His emotions. What if I do this? As she moved forward. A man she judged. His emotions preceding him like a brick wall. That's not bad. I feel like there's a little. Let's leave a little bit larger space there. A man she judged. His emotions preceding him like a brick wall. Okay. I'm not going to worry about those clicks. I did hear them. She cracked. I did hear them. But those are things that I'm going to go through, and after I delete little bits and pieces that need to be deleted, where I had to repeat things because I wanted it to sound better, then I'll go through and listen for those clicks and pops and mouth noises. A blue-clad police officer. Police officers. See, words are hard sometimes. So I like to make sure it sounds better, like there's this day. A blue-clad the door on the humid August day. A blue-clad police officer shifted on the humid August day. August day. August day? I don't know what's door on the humid August day. A blue. That's not. I'm going to go ahead and do a fix. So what I'm going to do is create a new audio file, and I'm just going to call this fixes. I haven't applied the racks to the other one yet, or applied my effects to the other one yet. I do have, as I'm listening, I am listening with them active so that I'll know, where to pay attention. But I'm not going to worry about it here. So where am I at in the book? She cracked the door on the humid August day. She cracked the door on the humid August day. So what I'll do now is I'll go over here and I'll Control F in the audiobook. She cracked the door on the humid August day. She cracked the door. So that's the only sentence I'm going to re-record. I'm going to bring this over here so that I can see it a little bit better. Go into my fixes. She cracked the door on the humid August day. She cracked the door on the humid August day. She cracked the door on the humid August day. I think the last one. She cracked the door on the humid August day. She cracked the door on the humid August day. She cracked the door on the humid August day. That's better. So what I'll do is I'll just copy that one. I can Control X or Control C, it doesn't matter. I'll go in here. She cracked the door on the humid August day. So I'm going to grab just that bit and paste in the new humor. She cracked the door on the humid August day. A blue-clad police officer shifted his weight from one foot to the other. That's better. That's much better. So now I'll move over to the next section that needs a little bit. He felt she didn't want to get. He felt she did. Typically, you can look at them and say, this looks like this, slightly different. More often than not, they look almost identical. So you can kind of visually pick out where that change needs to happen. See, like this one. I know that this whole section here is going to get deleted. All of this It's going to go bye-bye because you can see this looks almost identical, but we'll listen. While she didn't exactly recognize the see? Delete. And it's good to go. Her heart stuttered. While she didn't exactly recognize the face, she couldn't mistake the expensive clothes, cropper. There's a giggle. While she didn't exactly recognize the face, her heart stuttered. While she didn't exactly recognize the face, okay, her heart stuttered. While she didn't exactly recognize the face, she couldn't mistake the expensive clothes, copper skin, and close-cropped hair. See, I don't know if I want to keep this part. While she didn't exactly recognize the face, and start at she couldn't mistake the while she didn't exactly recognize the face, her heart stuttered. While she didn't exactly recognize her heart stuttered. While she didn't exactly recognize the face. See, I think I want to keep this and go to here. She couldn't, and then now let's see what that sounds like. Her heart stuttered. While she didn't exactly recognize the face, she couldn't mistake. Oh, no. So part of face is missing. Recognize the face. Oh. Face. She couldn't. That's the problem, is the words were kind of blended together there, which I'm trying to stop doing as much. I'm trying to make sure that there's space enough that if I need to make an edit, I'm not having to edit more than a few words, like a half a line, if that, rather than entire sections, because everything just sort of blends together to the point that you can't separate them out to be able to put in a new piece, like right there. So while she didn't, I have no choice but to use that. Her heart stuttered. While she didn't exactly, I can turn the volume down here. So I can turn the volume down on this to sort of help it to stuttered. While she didn't exactly recognize the face, so let's go over here and see what all this is. He asked. So this is going to be here. At the rate she was healing in a few more hours, every mark on her would. Yeah, this is fine. See, like right here, at the rate she was healing in a few more like the sound doesn't break. There's no break. It should be at the rate she was healing in a few hours. At the rate she was healing in a few hours. There needs to be a clear break so that if I needed to start at in a few hours, I could do that. But with this, you can see right here, it just sort of blends together. At the rate she was healing in a few hours, which for me is more natural speak. I don't have a lot of, if I know what the hell I'm saying rather than like right now. Okay. A miracle to her more than him. A miracle to her more than anyone else. Okay. She muttered a lie. The and a. I caught my mistake as I was saying it. Is he the victim? So I know that I can come right in here. Is he the victim? I should be able to, even with a little gap. 2 days ago, is he the victim? What is that? 2 days ago, is he the victim? I saw him around the neighborhood a few days ago. See, I saw him around the. You can't really hear the him. I saw him around the. That's why I redid that part. I saw him around the neighborhood a few days ago. Is he the victim? I'll repeat myself quite often. Sorry. I was sitting on my leg and my foot is going to sleep. Okay. And any gaps that are too long, I will take those out when I go back and listen for mouth noises. She tasted the detective's suspicion in the... I think I had an issue with the word detective right there for a second. She tasted the detective's suspicion in the back of her throat and lied again. I'm sure. I feel like this gap is too long, and I'll go ahead and... In the blink of an eye... I'll go ahead and take that out, because it was very, very obvious. She remembered almost... See, like this is going to be too big. He had a good heart, but she needed him to go away. Now. She shut the door and leaned against... Yeah, I thought maybe that was a separation, like a change of point of view. Wait, it wasn't. Now. She shut the door and leaned against the... How had a bad guy slipped under her foolproof... Wouldn't she have known if it'd been even a little dangerous? I feel like this is... I think I stopped here to take my sweater off and get a drink of water or something like that. These are all things that... She'd made a deal with herself to... Twisted. This kind of thing should never happen. She'd made a deal with herself to use her gift to help good people. Okay. Some freak with at least one attempted... What had gone wrong? Some freak with at least one attempted murder under his belt. So I'm going to turn what had gone wrong up a little bit, just so that it fits more. Otherwise, an unbearable burden. What had gone wrong? Some freak with at least one attempted murder under his... That's better. All the good... As the full impact of life... She fought the urge... She fought the urge to vomit. She fought the urge to vomit. She'd healed a killer and put him back on the street. Okay, so I think this right here... Sam stared... Yeah, this is a break in, or a change of POV. On the street. So I'm going to delete that little bit. So I want about a full second right here. That's 2 seconds. I like to have about a second between changes of POV. So right about there. So then I'm going to take this, go in here just till right about there. I'm going to delete that. Him back on the street. Sam stared out the window of his rental car, a nondescript Toyota. A nondescript car, a nondescript Toyota Camry. Leaning forward, he waited for his left hand. He waited for the nosy cop to walk away from the house. Whitewashed. I hear that a lot when I'm editing. And also plain, which was fine. I think I took a sip of water here or something, so let's... Inside to remember the floor plan. Also plain, which was fine. No, it's too much. For the floor plan, also plain, which was fine since the woman inside... Okay, whatever this is his stupid loud. Ribs had dissipated. Actually, the pain the beginning of the word actually. Like, that is stupid loud. So I'm gonna do this. Dissipated. Actually, the pain everywhere would soon be gone. Nothing short of miraculous can. Actually, the pain everywhere would soon be gone. I don't like that. So I'm gonna remove this part. We're gonna re-record. So I'm gonna go into fixes, select everything and delete. Then I'm gonna find the line in the audiobook so that I could just listen to what I say there, but what if there was a mistake there? I mean, it's not necessarily likely. Actually, the pain everywhere would soon be gone. Actually, the pain everywhere would soon be gone. Pain. Exact matches. The pain everywhere. Yep, there it is. Actually, the pain everywhere would soon be gone. So I'm going to go in fixes, hit record, and we're going to re-record that line. After a sip of water and some chapstick or lip balm. Actually, the pain everywhere would soon be gone. 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 And then, of course, my stomach has to do that weird gurgle thing where the water is like falling down the waterfall and you can hear it right there at the end of that. You won't be able to hear it, but once I get things in there with them. Yeah. So, actually, the pain everywhere would soon be gone. So I'm going to try inserting each one of these and see which one sounds better. So I'm just going to Control-C it and then go right in here. Actually, the ribs had dissipated. Actually, the pain everywhere would soon be gone. Nothing short of miraculous, considering his... Okay, that's not bad. Let's go in and do the second one. Actually, the pain everywhere would soon be gone. I already don't like that one. I think I'm going to like either the first one or the third one better. But let's see which one. Actually, which one we like better. His ribs had dissipated. Actually, the pain Nope. We're going to go back to the first one. I can already tell I like that one better. His ribs had dissipated. Actually, the pain everywhere would soon be gone. Nothing short of miraculous. See, that's what I like to do. When I don't like a line, I will go in and fix it. Nothing short of miraculous, considering he'd been sliced. Okay, nothing short of miraculous, considering he'd been sliced and diced like a side of beef the night before. Like a side of beef the night before. Soon be gone. Nothing short of miraculous, considering he'd been sliced and diced like a side of beef the night before. The police... Okay, let's go to the next one. The front door opened. Okay. This part doesn't take me nearly as long as editing out any mouth noise, pops and clicks and things like that. His encounter with Terrell had been There we go. The thought no more crossed his mind. Then he went into action, stuffing off his engine. I don't know where the word stuffing came from in that situation, but yeah. I'll put it right there. And he went into action, shutting off his engine and locking the doors, as if he belonged at her back door. Next in line. He didn't have much in the... She didn't have much... I said he the first time instead of she. For all this... Before all this mess. For all this mess. before all this mess. He sighed and went back to work. Did she have business? So I know that this needs to come right about there. On the side? Did she have healed people on the side? Did she have business cards? A Facebook fan page? How had he ended up in her house? The front door opened and closed. The front door opened and closed while he inspected a pile of romance novels on the bedside table. And he turned toward the door and stopped short. Not 3 feet away, a very angry blonde blocked the doorway. Who are you and what the fuck are you doing in my house? You tell him. All right, so at this point, I've already done my half a second at the head of the recording. So this needs to be 3.5. I like to be very consistent. And I can see that right down here in the bottom. I had it at 3.5 until I lifted my, here we go. And then, boop, deleted. So that is all of my deleted parts and re-records done. So I can actually close out the fixes file. Nope, don't want to save changes to fixes. Now I'm going to go to the beginning, and this is where I'll really start listening for those pops and clicks and things. Sorry, I have to put my sweater on. So if you see me with my eyes closed, I won't be able to see chat because I'm listening for anomalies in the audio. Because that's how I get rid of them. I need more coffee. All right, here goes. Chapter 2. Sam took a shallow breath as his eyes fluttered open. Shallow breath as his eyes fluttered. Breath as his eyes. Oh, I see you. You're right there. Breath as his eyes fluttered. Breath as his eyes. There's one right there. Breath as his eyes fluttered open against pitch black. Awareness washed over him, and his mind reeled with horrific memories of fists and claws and teeth. Where am I? He flinched and felt some. This is way too much space. I keep looking to the bottom right of my screen when I should be looking, because I'm not even going to get started on the issue that I've had with Waves and what we had to do to my PC to finally get me to a point where I could use my Waves plugins. I can use them now, but I've had to reinstall a whole bunch of stuff and change things up. So I wasn't sure how to get my DAW back to where it was before because I'd used someone else's configuration that I'd found. So I'm relearning it. This is a minute and 31, or not a minute, 1.314 seconds. I want this to be between a half and 3/4 of a second. So I'm going to do this and delete here. And claws and teeth. Where am I? And I also like to listen to where I feel like the next line would logically pick up, would naturally pick up. So this should sound more natural. Memories of fists and claws and teeth. Where am I? He flinched and felt someone. Yeah, okay. He flinched and felt someone. He flinched and. There's something in here. He flinched and felt someone. I'm not going to get too nitpicky because what I'm hearing is not bad. This is, with the racks or with the effects rack in effect. I could go ahead and apply it just to see. You know what? Let's do that. Let's just apply it. That way I'm only removing obvious things, because it's going to take care of the other things, because I have the X click on, and it takes it a hot second. Hi, welcome to anyone who wasn't here before. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the beginning, just because, and it should be just fine. Chapter 2. Sam took a shallow breath as his eyes fluttered open against pitch black. Awareness washed over him, and his mind reeled with horrific memories of fists and claws and teeth. Where am I? He flinched and felt someone beside him. A groan from the body alongside his sent his gut plummeting. I hear you. There you are. Gut plummeting. He was neither dead nor alone. So this is way too big a gap. Let's see how this sounds. He was neither dead nor alone. His lifeless... Okay, that... Nor alone. Why is this so much higher? Let's turn this down a little bit. Nor alone. His lifeless body... That was a big pop right there. His lifeless body. His lifeless body. What the heck? His lifeless body. His lifeless body should be lying under a heap of garbage, the dumpster, the last thing he remembered after his foolish ambush of Cayman Terrell. His element of still too long. Bush of Cayman Terrell. His element of surprise lasted mere heartbeats, not nearly long enough to press any advantage, as if any advantage would have mattered. There's something in here. His element of surprise lasted mere heartbeats. Let's get rid of you, whatever you are. Lasted mere heartbeats, not beats. Ah, I see you down here. Lasted mere heartbeats, not nearly... And you? Heartbeats, not nearly long enough to press any advantage. You and you. To press any advantage. And you. To press any advantage. As if any advantage would have... So I've found that where this little gap is, it's natural to have that gap there. If any advantage would have... So a lot of times if I just go through and remove the anomaly, I don't have to worry about removing it from the entire time, from the entire wavelength. I don't know what to call it. But just clearing those gaps clears it up. Any advantage would have mattered. Any advantage would have... this right here. If any advantage would have mattered. If any advantage would have mattered. Had been no match. Would have mattered. Had been no match and nowhere near I saw you before I heard you. There we go. No match and nowhere near prepared for battle. As he laid his hands against his bare chest, nowhere near prepared for battle. As he... That's too long. Prepared for battle. As he laid his hands against his bare... I heard you and you. As he laid his hands against his bare chest, an even more amazing truth exploded in his brain. Exploded in his brain. I can't remember why that gap is there. Truth exploded in his brain. No truth exploded in his brain. Truth exploded. Truth exploded in his brain. Truth exploded in his brain. Exploded in his brain. No pain. The soothing realization. His brain. No pain. His brain. No pain. The soothing realization. The soothing realization did little to... I feel like this is too long. This is what? That's 0.75. Let's just remove a little bit of it because it just doesn't... I understand the need of the gap there. It drives home the pain in his brain. No pain. Or no pain? The soothing realization did little to comfort him. Did little to comfort him. And did little to comfort him. Did little to comfort him. Instead, his heart hammered against his ribs, and though his body ached as... I have to try not to watch the spectral view, because if I do, I'll see things and my brain thinks I've heard something. It's nuts. And though his body ached as he ached as... I did hear you though, dude. Body ached as he stretched his limbs. Ached as he stretched his... That's also another reason why I close my eyes sometimes. Ached as he stretched his limbs. He could stretch his limbs, which had been broken, crushed, and burned, the skin flayed. He turned his head to the left and read the red digits on a clock beside the bed. Read the red digits on a clock beside... Read the red digits on a clock beside the bed. 8:43 a.m. Turning the opposite direction, he glimpsed the barest outline of a female and held his breath. Female and held his breath. Female and held his breath to... Turning the opposite direction. Turning the opposite direction, he glimpsed the barest outline of a female and held his breath to listen for hers. She too was alive, despite... This is a bit too long. Not terribly long, but too long for my liking. Female and held his breath to listen for hers. She too was alive, despite labored breaths. Labored breaths. What the holy hell? Did he change dimensions? Travel through time? No way should he even be alive, much less in bed. Even be alive, much less... Review and you... No way should he even be alive, much less in bed with a strange woman. Naked, he discovered. Okay. And you... Naked, he discovered, on top of everything else. Too long a gap. Like, how long is this? I try not to have more than about 3/4 of a second. I have this system. So if it's one person's thoughts and spoken words in a row, I like to have a third to a half second between those, depending on what it is or how it feels in that moment. And then when it's, sorry, I keep hitting that. When it's a change of POV, about a second. When it's a change of not necessarily POV, but of thoughts versus spoken words of another person. So like it's from my point of view, but you're the one speaking the next line, then I like to have about 3/4 of a second. Sorry. 3/4 of a second. Of everything else. He listened to her shaky breaths and reached his hand across. He listened to her shaky breath. Strange woman. Naked, he discovered, on top of everything else. He discovered on top. Still there, because it goes down. He discovered on top of everything else. He listened to her shaky breaths and reached his hand across. And reached his hand across the space to try and touch her. The skin of her shoulder felt hot, feverish, and he ran his fingers down the length of her arm. So if you see me looking up, it's because I'm not watching this spectral view. Because again, I will see things that look like it should be a sound and I'm going to hear a sound. My brain just, that's how it works. Feverish, and he ran his fingers down the length of her arm, disjointed at the elbow. She didn't wake, didn't move a millimeter, and panic swelled in his mind. What have I done to her? I heard that little bit right there at the end of it. What have I done to her? So this feels like, where I hit pause here, feels like the natural progression of what's happening. Too many unknowns. What have I done to her? Yeah, just a tiny bit more. Too many unknowns coupled with the strange woman sharing a strange space. Strange space pushed his fight or flight response into overdrive. And because that bad boy was loud right there. And because fight hadn't worked out for him and because fight hadn't worked out for him last. I don't like how "and because" sounds right there. It sometimes. And because fight hadn't worked out for him last. And because fight hadn't worked out for. And because fight hadn't worked out for him last time, he. And because fight hadn't worked out for. And because fight hadn't worked out for him last time, he opted for flight and he opted for flight instead, making him the biggest coward in the So I found also that the closer you are zoomed in, the more detailed the patch, if that makes sense. If I zoom out, it's going to remove more, making him the biggest coward in the entire known. See, all of this right here is annoying. Coward in the entire known world for all time. Sliding from the bed, he stood. I know it's pretty quiet. Besides, I would play music or something, which is what I used to do in my my sewing streams and things like that over on Twitch, and my sewing videos on YouTube on my other channel. But if I have music playing, I'm not going to be able to hear those anomalies in. So for some of you who aren't voice actors or audiobook narrators, you're probably going to be very bored listening to the same line over and over again, or even a partial word or line where I'm trying to find that anomaly that needs to be fixed in the audio. Sliding from the bed, he stumbled over his clothing and found like that. Clothing and found the wall. And found the wall with his shoulder. There it is. And found the wall with his shoulder real quick. His balance resembled. His balance resembled a newborn giraffe as he scooped everything up and felt. As he scooped everything. Giraffe as he scooped everything up. Born giraffe as he scooped everything up and felt the perimeter of the small space until he found the door. Then made his exit into a nondescript. It's still there, and I've just got to find it. Then made his exit. It's still there. Is this it? then made his exit into a nondescript. Sometimes they're a little hard to find, but thank goodness for spectral view, because I wouldn't be able to find any of them if it weren't for that. Then made his exit into a nondescript and dimly lit hallway. A nondescript and dimly lit hallway. Even at his spoiled, addicted worst, when he denied who he was and where he came from, he never ended up naked and glued back together inside a crackerbox house with an unknown woman when he should be dead instead. He stumbled down the hall and stopped short when he saw a pool of drying blood square in the middle of the I think that's it. Blood square in the middle of the living room. All the furniture had been pushed against the wall at odd angles, giving a chaotic impression of what must have happened. Looking down at it. See, this gap is too long. I want to remove like some in the middle. When there's a line like that, I can just remove from the middle. This is exactly 1 second. Let's take it down about that far. I'm going to see how natural it sounds. A chaotic impression of what must have happened. Looking down at his clothes, he tried not to be Looking down at his clothes, he tried not to be surprised and repulsed by the amount of blood he now held in his hands. All this gore belonged to him, no doubt. There we go. He'd faced off with Terrell. Nope. So shift space is record. And I tend to hold down the shift key when I'm editing because, so if I'm using the brush tool, when I hold down shift, it's going to go in a straight line down. So I don't have to worry about screwing up the audio by going off on the side like that. I'm going to go ahead and undo those two little ditties that I just did. He'd faced off. So what happened there was I was holding down shift, and when I hit space to pause, it hit record. It started recording. He'd faced off with Terrell and come out the loser. Right there. With Terrell and come out the loser. Yet he should have lost. That needs to be closer together. And come out the loser. Right there. A lot closer together. Terrell and come out the loser. Yet he should have lost his heart. Should have at least bled out. His soul sent off to be reincarnated. He shouldn't be breathing and walking and being confused right now. So why was he? He looked over his shoulder at the closed door and considered the woman inside. See, if I were watching the spectral view, I would be going through and deleting every one of these little anomalous things that I can see. And it's just unnecessary. It takes up way too much time. Nobody's going to hear it. And if they do, they got some super freaking sensitive hearing. Considered the woman in. If I can hear it, I will try to find it and remove it, but that's why I don't watch it. The door and considered the woman inside. What? Now, see, I left. See all of these? When I first started editing, I was going in here and spending hours and hours removing every single little anomalous visual thing in the spectral view when it just isn't necessary. He looked over his shoulder at the closed door and considered the woman inside. What did she have to do with his present state? Nothing or everything? Oh, see, right in there. That's nothing or everything. Nothing or everything. Let's go ahead and back up and just. Nothing or everything. Got that? Nothing or everything? Who the hell was she and how had... Ooh, I heard you. Who was she and how had he... There? Was she and how had he arrived... Right there? Was she and how had he arrived here? Without any other options, he pulled on his torn, burnt, and blood-stained jeans. I try to pause as soon as I hear it. That way it will be easier to remove. Jeans and jacket, and counted the shirt a loss. Still, he couldn't leave the garment behind. Oh, you're a big one. He couldn't leave the garment behind any more than he could walk away from this bloody carpet. First rule of being Grigori? Don't leave your DNA lying around. His father's first rule. No doctors, no science. I heard those. Did not want to hear that. No doctors, no scientists, and definitely no surprise babies. God, had he had sex with this woman? Sam cringed. God, had he had sex? Okay, that's just too much. I'm going to go ahead and record another fix. So I'm going to open a new audio file, call it fixes. God, had he had sex with this woman? 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 God, had he... God, had he had sex with this woman? So, I'll go through and find the one that I prefer. God, had he had sex with this woman? God, had he had sex with this woman? This one sounds way too humorous, like he's laughing at the situation. God, had he had sex with this woman? This one sounds a little more self-deprecating, which is what we're looking for, in my opinion. Considering the shape he was in and the shape she is now in, you know, you want to be appalled at the fact that, or at the thought that you could have been in that situation. God, had he had sex with this woman? Okay, this one sounds almost like you'd be offended, so that's not going to happen. God, had he had sex with this woman? God, had he had sex with this woman? This one feels right and is close to what is already there. So let's... God, had he had sex with this woman? God, had he had sex with this woman? So this is the one. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and apply the racks to this because I've already applied it to the other file. God, had he had sex with this woman? Yeah, this is the one. So I'm going to take this and copy it over, or take it over to here and paste it in. And definitely no surprise babies. God. Okay, so this needs to be shorter. No surprise babies. Like really short. And definitely no surprise babies. Realization. God, had he had sex with this woman? Okay, I want to change that. No, see. No surprise babies. Realization. Definitely no surprise babies. God. Nope, it's still too long. No surprise babies. God, had he had sex with this woman? Better. Sam cringed. This also, I think maybe a third of a second. That's already longer than... And this also, I think, needs to be shorter still. No scientists and definitely no surprise babies. God, had he had sex with this woman? Better. Sam cringed. Sam cringed. There's something in there. Sam cringed. Go back to my brush and just... Sam cringed. Could a mangled person even perform? He couldn't remember anything. Remember anything. Yeah, right there. Remember anything and didn't think sex was... anything and didn't think sex would be a part of this scene. anything and didn't think sex would yeah. And didn't think sex would be a part of this scene. One never knew though. One never knew though. Let's go ahead and one never knew though. He headed for the exit. Okay, so what is the gap here? We're at over a second. So let's take it back about this far. He headed for the exit. Because we're kind of changing topic a little bit. Like he's leaving that thought process behind and he's leaving now. He headed for the exit, making sure to lock the door from the inside to keep this woman as safe as possible. And there was something right back here. He headed for the exit, making sure to lock the door. It's just a little bit of mouth noise that I can kind of clean up. Sure to lock the door from the inside to keep this woman as safe as possible, and slipped into the morning. So let's shorten this. As possible, and slipped into the morning. Thankful to be alive, he found his bearings and headed for his hotel, about a half a mile toward downtown. He made no eye contact. He made no eye contact with the staff, and because he'd downscaled his usual elaborate needs, no one questioned his appearance before. Oh no, I heard that. That's this right here. His appearance before he made his way to the safety of his room. So I'm trying to pointedly not look at the heat map. Oh God. Wearing a headset, my ears itch so bad. It doesn't help that my psoriasis has been acting up. So I have psoriasis in my ears and it's very, very itchy. Okay, this gap is definitely too long. No one questioned his appearance before he. I hear you. And you. His appearance before he made his way to the safety of his room. What is this? Immediately, he turned on the to the safety of his room. This is a more logical gap. Well, listen. Made his way to the safety of his room. Immediately, he a little bit more. I'm gonna. His way to the safety of his room. Immediately, he turned on the shower. And shed his clothing, taking inventory. So if the sound is a lower sound, it's going to be down here. Typically, it's a higher one that you can obviously see, but this one that I can hear right here, taking inventory of it, it's that low pop. That's this right here. And so I can clothing, taking inventory of his. No, I can still hear it. Taking inventory of his. Taking inventory. That's because it's over here. There. Taking inventory of his body before stepping under the hot spray of water. He looked like a walking, talking bruise. He looked like a walking, talking bruise. He looked like a walking, talking bruise. He looked like a walk. He looked like a. He looked like a walking, talking bruise. His color tended toward yellow as if jaundiced, and his toward yellow as if jaundiced. Yellow as if jaundiced, and his eyes showed purple around the sockets across the bridge of his nose, his ribs. Purple around the sockets across the bridge of his nose, the sockets across the bridge of his nose. Okay, so I need to do across the bridge of the sockets, across the bridge of his nose, his ribs. His bones ached, and he suspected these yellow as if jaundiced, and his eyes showed purple around the sockets, across the bridge of his nose, his ribs. That sounds horrible. Sockets, across the bridge, across the bridge, across the bridge of his sockets, across the bridge of his nose, his ribs. His bones ached, and he suspected these. Why does this sound like it's just like so much louder? The bridge of his nose, his ribs. His bones ached, and there's something here. His bones ached, and he suspected these areas had been broken or crushed. Why? His bones ached, and he his bones. There's something else here. Is this it? His bones ached, and he suspected ached, and he. His bones ached, and he suspected the. His bones ached, and he suspected these areas had been broken or crushed. His bones ached, and he suspected these areas had been broken or crushed. His bones ached, and he expected. Nope. Yep, okay, let's go to that. His bones ached, and he suspected these areas had been broken or crushed. His bones ached, and he suspected these areas had been broken or crushed. He looked like a walking, talking bruise. His color tended toward yellow. Sorry, I have to take my headphones off real quick while I'm recording because I find that. So, they're broken. We'll just put it that way. They're broken. And when I move, it makes noise. Okay, let's try this again. I'm going to go ahead and record that entire section. He looked like a walking, talking bruise. His color tended toward yellow, as if jaundiced, and his eyes showed purple around the sockets, across the bridge of his nose, his ribs. His bones ached, and he suspected these areas had been broken or crushed. White seams appeared where his skin had been rejoined, without stitches. All right, let's see how that sounds. He looked like a walking, talking bruise. His bones ached. White seams appeared where his. So the word white there can be turned down because that's way too loud. Areas had been broken or crushed. White seams appeared. So I'm going to go ahead and apply my audiobooks rack. No. No. Nope. Damn it. This is bad, y'all, because I didn't save. Yeah, let's open a recovered session. Let's see how much. Oh my God. And he suspected okay. His color tended toward yellow, as if. He looked like a walking, talking bruise. His color tended toward yellow, as if jaundiced, and his eyes showed purple around the sockets, across the bridge of his nose. I think this whole thing is going to sound better than what's there. I am so glad I did not lose that. I would have not been happy. I would have had to read down a lot of work. His color tended toward yellow, like a walking, talking bruise. White seams. He looked like a walking, talking bruise. He looked like a walking, talking bruise. His body before stepping under the hot spray of water. He looked like a walking, talking bruise. His color tended toward yellow, as if jaundiced, and his eyes showed purple around the sockets, across the bridge of his nose, his ribs. I hear something there. Across the bridge of his nose, Is it this? Across the bridge of his nose, his ribs. His bones ached and he I hear a lot right there. His bones ached. Oddly enough, this right here, all of this, is not what I was hearing. His bones ached and he So we got this. And this. Bones ached and he And this. Bones ached and he suspected these areas had been broken or crushed. There's something else there. His bones ached. His bones ached and he suspected these areas had been broken or There's that, which is super minor. I barely heard it. His bones ached and he suspected bones ached and he suspected that? Bones ached and he suspected these areas had been broken or crushed. White seams appeared where his skin had been rejoined without his skin had been rejoined without stitches. Yeah, that sounds so much better than what was there before. Now let's go ahead and bring this in. And his eyes showed purple around the story of his body before stepping under the hot spray of water. He looked like a walking, talking bruise. His color tended toward yellow, as if jaundiced, and his eyes showed purple around the socket. His eyes showed purple around the socket. His eyes showed purple around the His eyes showed purple around eyes showed purple purple His eyes showed purple around the sockets. Across the bridge of his nose, his ribs. His bones ached and he suspected these areas had been broken or crushed. White seams appeared where his skin had been rejoined without stitches. Stepping back from the mirror, one of two things. Okay, so it's going to be pretty obvious that was replaced. Oh my goodness. Without stitches. Stepping back from the mirror, one of two things had happened. Stepping back from the mirror, one of two things had happened. Stepping back from the mirror, one of two things had happened. Stepping back from the mirror, one of two things had happened. Either he'd made up the entire confrontation with his father's killer in Either he'd made up the entire So yes, editing is kind of boring for a lot of people. I really enjoy this process. I'm, I guess, the exception to the rule, a little odd when it comes to things like this. But I guess, it is what it is. I could feel my, the bottle vibrating. It's a thing. Of two things had happened. There's something going on here that's annoying. With the words had happened. Stepping back from the mirror, one of two things had happened. Either he'd made up the entire confrontation with his father's killer. With his father's killer in his warped imagination. And he was the patriarchal maniac that had patriarchal? Patricidal. I'm pretty sure the word is patricidal. Did I say patriarchal? And he was the Patricidal. It's patricidal. And he was the patricidal maniac the detectives in Palm Beach thought he was. Made up the entire confrontation with his father's killer in his warped imagination, and he was the patriarchal maniac. Patriarchal. It's patricidal. So let me go over here. And he was the patricidal maniac the detectives in Palm Beach thought he was. Palm Beach thought he was. Or a complete... Oh, that's lovely. I did some sort of thing in the audiobook here, and it's got the whole, there we go. What? Nope, that's not what I wanted. Audio hardware. What have we got going on here? What do you mean not working? Yes. I don't know why it does that sometimes. No clue. And he was the I almost said it again. Okay, so I'm going to kind of do a re-record of this paragraph or two paragraphs because for some reason it's not meshing well in my brain. I'm not really liking the way it's sounding. So I'm going to start from stepping back from the mirror. One of two things had happened because I don't like the way the had happened. My speaker's making weird noises now too. I'm going to take this off and re-record that line after a sip of water. Gotta wet the whistle. Okay. Stepping back from the mirror, one of two things had happened. Either he'd made up an entire confrontation. Stepping back from the mirror, one of two things had happened. Either he'd made up the entire confrontation with his father's killer in his warped imagination, and he was the patricidal maniac the detectives in Palm Beach thought he was, or a complete stranger living inside a run-down, low-rent house had somehow magically healed him. There was no in-between, and as he let the scalding water run down his aching yet whole body, he knew which one he believed, and he had a lot of questions for her. There we go. All right, so now I get to put my headphones back on. All right, so either he'd made up an... Stepping back from the mirror, one of two things had happened. Either he'd made up the... And he was the patricidal maniac that had... I don't like the way that sounds. Like something, I don't know what the heck is going on there, but let's try this again. I'll just leave the headset on. Stepping back from the mirror. Nope. It rubbed up against the thing here and it's irritating me. Okay. Stepping back from the mirror, one of two things had happened. Either he'd made up the entire confrontation with his father's killer in his warped imagination, and he was the patricidal maniac the detectives in Palm Beach thought he was, or a complete stranger living inside a run-down, low-rent house had somehow magically healed him. There was no in-between, and as he let the scalding water run down his aching yet whole body, he knew which one he believed, and he had a lot of questions for her. All right. Stepping back from the mirror. Oh, wait. Here we go. Irritating me. Stepping back from the mirror. I feel like the back should be back. Stepping back from the mirror. 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 One. Stepping back from the mirror. Stepping back from the mirror. One of two. Stepping back from the mirror. One of two things had happened. Two things had happened. So I'm going to go to the end and re-record that part after my speaker stops making noises. Stepping back from the mirror, one of two things had happened. Stepping back from the mirror, one of two things had happened. Stepping back from the mirror, one of two things had happened. Stepping back from the mirror, let me go back here to the beginning. Stepping back from the mirror. Yeah, let's go with the last one. Stepping back from the mirror. Nope. Stepping back from the mirror. One of two things. Stepping back from the mirror. Yeah, this one. So we're going to delete this. Stepping back from the mirror. One of two things had happened. Stepping back from had happened. Either he had made up the entire confrontation with... Let's get rid of part of that gap. I'm going to go ahead and apply the effects rack. Stepping back from the mirror, one of two things had happened. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this whole thing. Stepping back from the mirror. Yeah. One of two things. Let's start from here. Stepping back from the mirror, one of two things had happened. Either he'd made up the entire confrontation with his father's killer in his warped imagination, and he was the patriarchal maniac the detectives in Palm Beach thought he was, or a complete stranger living inside a run-down, low-rent house had somehow... And he had a lot of questions for her. Either he'd made up... Stepping back... Okay, so this whole thing right here. Replaced and rejoined without stitches. Stepping back from the mirror, one of two things had happened. Either he had made up the entire confrontation with his father's killer. Yeah, I like that a lot better. So I'm going to move this back over here. White seams appeared where his skin had been rejoined without stitches. Bones ached, and he suspected the white seams appeared where his skin had been rejoined without stitches. Rejoined without this right here. Joined without stitches. Stepping back from the mirror, one of two things had happened. One of two things had happened. One of two things had happened. Either he had made up the entire confrontation. There's something here that is... Either he had made up the entire... You hear it? Made up the entire confrontation with his father's killer in his warped imagination. With his father's killer in his warped imagination. And he was the patricidal maniac, the detective. Where are you? maniac the detectives in Palm Beach thought he was, or a complete stranger living inside a rundown low-rent house had somehow magically healed him. There was no in-between. 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 And as he let the scalding water run down his aching yet whole body, he knew which one he believed. And he had a lot of questions for her. There we go. So now I want at least a second till after, so I like to start right here where it looks like the sound stops, not where the last of the waves, because if I zoom in here, there's a minor bit of wave there, not a lot, because there is a little bit of room tone, but I want the sound to completely fade out. I don't want to chop it off here because it sounds odd. So I want there to be about a second, just right at a second, maybe a little over, because this is the change in POV, I believe. Questions for her. Chloe's head throbbed like someone had tried to split her skull open with a pickaxe, while the muscles in her arms burned from scrubbing her blood. And he had a lot of questions for her. Chloe's head throbbed like someone had tried to split her skull. Throbbed like someone had tried to split her skull open. Like someone had tried to split her skull open with a pickaxe, while the muscles in her arms. I think what's happening when it gets like that is I'm too close. Instead of using my hang 10, I'm getting right up here. I'm getting in it. So I have to start watching that. While the muscles in her arms burn. While the muscles in her arm. I see you. Pickaxe. While the muscles in her arms burned from scrubbing her blood. Her arms burned from scrubbing. From scrubbing. There's something there. Burned from scrubbing. Burned from scrubbing her blood-stained carpet. Useless. I heard you, and I heard you. I don't know. Useless. 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 As she sucked air into her lungs. Sorry if you can hear that. That is my furnace kicking on. As she sucked air into her lungs through the pain of bruised ribs, she realized her body... I heard you. She realized her body carried too many injuries to count. She had not been in this kind of shape. She had not been in this kind of shape. Ever. Two things became crystal clear as she sat back on her heel. Sat back on her heels. Sat back on her heels. Back on her heels. On her heels. Even though I hear you. Even though she appeared to have been beat all to hell, her recovery time had somehow been cut in half this go around. Given the extent of the injury, she was amazed she could even move. And he was gone when she woke up, naked in her own bed. naked in her own bed. She gave up. This damn blood washed off her hands better than out of this decade. Blood washed off her hands better than out of this decade-old shag. This decade-old shag. This decade-old shag. Out of this decade-old out of this decade-old shag. Out of this decade-old out of this decade. It's still there and it's driving me nuts. Better than out of this decade. Out of this decade. Better than out of this decade-old shag. She tilted her head and inspected the damage for the hundred. I heard you. There. Inspected the damage for the the damage right there. Inspected the damage for the 100th. Inspected the damage for the I see you. Inspected the damage for the 100th time. She closed her eyes and groaned. How would she explain this? That one's obvious. How would she explain this? How would she explain this to the landlord? Shaking her head. A little bit less, I think, there. The landlord. Shaking her head, she resumed the futile exercise and muttered, I always tell. So this where she muttered, I want about a third muttered to a half a second. This is 0.406. I'm going to take out this little bit right here. The futile exercise and muttered, I always tell them to put the bodies on the tarp for this exact reason. Okay, reason has a big old pop in it. Exact reason. She stopped. Let's see what we got here. 3-8. Okay. The tarp for this exact reason. She stopped, stood, and stepped away. She stopped, stood, and stepped away, still foggy about what actually happened last night. Lots of blood, obviously. Only a few solid details clung to her memory. Her friends had banged on the door early in the morning. Her friends had banged on the door early. Had banged on the door early in the. There's still something there, right there, I think. Friends had banged on the door early in the morning. Between the two of them, they'd carried a tall olive. I want her friends had banged on the door early in the morning, but between the two of them, they'd carried a tall early in the morning. On the door early in the morning. Her friends had banged on the door early in the morning. Her friends had banged on the door early in the morning. Her friends had banged on the door early in the morning. Between the two of them, they. Her friends had banged on the door early in the morning. I think that's going to be better. Her friends had clung to her memory. Her friends had banged on the door early in the morning. Between the two of them, they. Her friends had banged on the. Her friends had banged on the door early in the. Friends had banged on the door early in the morning. Friends had banged on the door. Had banged on the door early in the morning. Between the two of them, they'd carried a tall, olive-skinned man into the house with his eyes rolled back in his head. His long legs dragged the floor as they heaved him forward onto the carpet. A large, powerfully built man. Let's move this closer to the carpet. A large, powerfully built man. She'd seen his insides, flashes of intestine. Man, she'd seen his inside. She'd seen his insides, flashes of intestine, muscles, and bone. Saw them again in her mind now. Muscles and bone. Saw them again in her mind. Saw them again in her mind now. Saw them again in her mind now. He should have already been dead. Oh, itchy nose. He should have already been dead. Her buddies had dropped him onto the floor and bolted. Her buddies had dropped him onto the floor and bolted. Had dropped him onto the floor and bolted. She didn't blame them. She didn't like anyone to see what she did anyway. Like making sausage backward. Could you imagine? You mean just like unpacking sausage? Just like, never mind. Ew. Yeah, that doesn't sound appealing to me. Making sausage backward. At all. Not appealing. Too much lotion. Way too much lotion. So yeah, as I was saying earlier, all of the little anomalies, things that look like would be a pop or a click or something like that, mouth noise on the heat map. I think that's what it's called, heat map. What is it? Spectral frequency. The spectral view heat map. What? Okay. Anyway, in the spectral view, all of these little lines that look like they should be something like this right here, and this, and this, and this over here, they might not be. Like making sausage backward. Like, I didn't hear anything that was too, like, obvious. Like making sausage backward. It just sounds like somebody speaking. Although I could clean this up a little bit. This is my D. Like making sausage backward. Like making... So I can go right in here and actually take out this. Like making sausage back. Like, it does clean it up a little bit, but I feel like it's unnecessary. Like making sausage backward. His injuries had been brutal. Like some wild beast had mistaken him for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Him for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Lunch and dinner. Broken bones in his arms, hands, and face, and the ribs. Pulled apart like someone wanted to open him right up. She dragged her wrist to open him right up. She dragged her wrist. She dragged her wrist across her brow. I gotta say too, since I've been able to use the plugins, editing goes so much faster. But like you can see, I've been live for an hour and 45 minutes roughly. And I'm barely halfway through with a 20-minute chapter in editing. So, but I also have been stopping to talk quite a bit. So, and now my hands feel, I don't know what it is with that lotion, but it doesn't, I don't like the way my hands feel now. Anyways, imagine editing without those. It was taking me 5-6 hours to edit one chapter, which is crazy, but it's getting done. And it goes a lot faster now that I have the plugins available. She dragged her wrist across her brow. She dragged her wrist across her brow. Across her brow. Across her... This right here? across her brow. Why hadn't he died? A little bit closer. Across her brow. Why hadn't he died? The blood loss alone would have killed a normal. A sharp knock on the door jerked her back to the moment. I don't know if normal is supposed to be like if the okay, so in the I can show you this in the blood loss alone would have killed a normal. A sharp knock on the door jerked her back to the moment. So it is supposed to be sort of like a gap there. A sharp knock on the door jerked her back to the moment. She grabbed a blanket from the back of the blood loss alone would have killed a normal. The blood loss alone would have killed a normal. No. The blood loss alone would have killed a normal. The blood loss alone would have killed a normal. A sharp knock on the door jerked her. The blood loss alone would have killed a normal. I want it to sound like it's going to say like a normal person. So the blood loss alone would have killed a normal person. The blood loss alone would have killed a normal person. So I can actually say it that way and then take the word person out. A sharp knock on the door jerked her back to the moment. So I'm going to do that. The blood loss alone would have killed a normal person. That sounded so weird. The blood loss alone would have killed a normal person. The blood loss alone would have killed a normal. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and apply the audiobooks rack to it. The blood loss alone would have killed a normal. The blood loss. Okay. So I'm going to go back into my regular, or the main file. The blood loss alone. And then I want to move this closer, I think. The blood loss alone would have killed a normal. A sharp knock on the door. Or does that... I wonder how that gap sounds. The blood loss alone would have killed a normal. A sharp knock on the door jerked her back to the moment. I think I'm going to leave that... let's see how it sounds with that a little bit shorter. The blood loss alone would have killed a normal. A sharp knock on the door jerked her back to... I actually kind of like it a little bit closer together. The blood loss alone would have killed a normal. A sharp knock on the door jerked her back to the moment. She grabbed a blanket from... Get my brush tool over here. She grabbed a blanket from the back of the chair and covered the stain. You can always tell when I get a little too close to the mic. She grabbed a blanket from the back of I'm not re-recording this chapter. Grabbed a blanket from the back of the chair and covered the stain. Kind of. Covered the stain. Kind of. Who on earth wanted her on a Sunday? The determination and anxiety of... Oh, hello, clicks. And pops and all this stuff in here. The determination and anxiety of the person on the other side of the door hit her full force as she moved forward. A man she judged, his emotions preceding him like a brick wall. I heard you. Bye-bye. Like a brick wall. All business, very little humor. There's something. Business. It's very little humor. You and you. All business, very little humor. You? It's very little humor. She cracked the door on the humid August day. A blue-clad police officer shifted his weight from one foot to the other. A little mouth noise there. Let's get rid of that. From one foot to the other. He held up his back. Hello? He held up his badge. He held up his badge. Good morning. I'm Lieutenant Daniels. Happened last night. Lots of blood, obviously. Wait, is that where I was at? No, that's not where I was. Still foggy about what actually happened last night. Lots of blood. Okay, where the hell am I at? Where was I at? Past this. Solid details clung to her. Her friends had banged on the door early in the morning. Between the two of them, they'd carried a tall, olive-skinned man. A large, powerfully built man. She'd seen his in. She didn't like anyone to see what she did. The blood loss alone would have. She cracked the door on the humid August day. A blue-clad police officer shifted his weight from one foot to the other. He held up his badge. Move this closer. He held up his badge. Good morning. I'm Lieutenant Daniels. She didn't respond. I'm investigating a shooting in the area last night, ma'am. Canvassing the neighborhood to see if anyone saw or heard anything unusual. Sorry. Chloe hid in the shadows. So I'm going to clean this up, and I want it to be closer to... Chloe hid. Sorry. Chloe hid in the shadows, keenly aware of the injury. Chloe hid in the shadows. Chloe hid in the shadows, keenly aware of the injury she'd taken. Chloe hid in the shadows, keenly aware of the injury she'd taken on. Still, her brand of unusual was not his brand. Not last night, anyway. So this can be moved closer together because this is directly related to each other. Not his brand. Not last night, anyway. And I hope you can tell the difference between the narration parts and Chloe's voice because was not his brand. Not last night, anyway. That's Chloe speaking. Not last night, anyway. Not last night, anyway. So then I'm going to bring this in. Not last night, anyway. His tight smile indicated he understood how criminal activity. He understood how criminal activity. He understood how criminal act. So this right there is way too bright. Understood how criminal activity happened in this. Criminal activity happened in. How criminal activity happened in this neighborhood almost every night. He felt she didn't want. He felt she did. He felt she did. He felt she didn't want to get involved. He felt sorry she lived here. He held up a He felt she didn't want. There's something in there that's driving me nuts. I don't know if it's this or this. He felt she didn't. He felt. Maybe down here. He felt she didn't want to get involved. He felt sorry she lived here. He felt sorry she lived. He felt sorry she lived here. He held up a grainy snapshot. Have you seen this man? Her heart stuttered. While she didn't exactly recognize the face, she couldn't mistake the... Close that up a little bit. While she didn't exactly recognize the face, she couldn't mistake the expensive... Couldn't mistake the expensive... Couldn't mistake the expensive... Couldn't mistake the expensive clothes, copper skin, and close-cropped hair. Recognize the face. She couldn't mistake the expensive clothes, copper skin, and close-cropped hair. She opened the door an inch further. Just a little bit. She opened the door an inch further. Opened the door an inch further. She opened the door an inch further. When the lieutenant cleared his throat, she pulled back. throat, she pulled back. His concern for her washed over her as soon as he glimpsed the fading... Concern for her washed over her as soon as he glimpsed the fading bruises on... Fading bruises. I have to turn my heater on. I'm starting to get really cold. So I'm just going to move that back. He glimpsed the fading bruises on her. He glimpsed the fading bruises on her face. Are you all right, ma'am? He asked. I see you. He asked. I'll be fine. See, like right here between him speaking and he asked needs to be approximately a third of a second. So 0.3334 is fine. That's just how I like to do it. Are you all right, ma'am? He asked. I'll be fine, she answered. So again, right here, 0.33 is what I'm looking for, roughly. So it's a little bit over that, so we're going to go ahead and just get rid of that. I'll be fine, she answered. I'll be fine. I'll be fine, she answered. At the rate she was healing, in a few more hours... the rate she was healing, in a few more hours, every mark on her would have disappeared. On her would have disappeared. On her would have disappeared. Would have disappeared. I hear it right there. On her would have disappeared. A miracle to her more than anyone. Her more than anyone else. Her more than anyone else. Who is this guy? Who is this guy? Is he familiar? See, this is, I feel like there needs to be about 3/4 of a second. 1/2 to 3/4 between the two of them. She says, who is this guy? And he has to take, I feel like in this situation, he would take a moment to think about what he was going to tell her. Who is this guy? Is he familiar? She muttered a lie. I saw him. So right here, she muttered a lie. So about 0.33. It doesn't have to be exact. Okay, so she muttered a lie. I saw him around. Is he familiar? She muttered a lie. So I'm going to move this a little bit closer, about 1/2 second. Right about there. Now let's listen from here. A miracle to her more than anyone else. Who is this guy? Is he familiar? I feel like I can move this miracle to her more than anyone else. Who is this guy? Is he familiar? She muttered a lie. I saw him around the neighborhood of... Yeah, that's better. I saw him around the neighborhood a few days ago. Is he the victim? Let's move this in. The victim? No. His frown deepened. No. His frown deepened. He's the shooter. So another 0.33, roughly. 3.5 is fine. I want to go to right where the sound sort of starts. We'll go to there. Is he the victim? No. His frown deepened. He's the shooter. He's armed and dangerous, wanted for questioning. Are you sure you haven't seen him in the last 48 hours? He's armed and dangerous, wanted... Armed and dangerous, Armed and dangerous, wanted for questioning. Are you sure you haven't seen him in the last 4... I don't know if you can tell, because the heater is showing up on my little audio bar in OBS, which is a little annoying. Yeah. Are you sure you haven't seen him in the last... Are you sure you haven't seen him in... Sure you haven't... sure you haven't seen him in... Are you sure you haven't seen him in the last 48 hours? 48 hours. 48 hours. Seen him and touched him and... So this is where it sort of breaks off from him speaking to her train of thought. So I want there to be probably about 3/4 of a second here. Yeah, this is good. Are you sure you haven't seen him in the last 48 hours? Seen him and touched him and God knows what else. She tasted the detective's suspicion. The detective's suspicion in the back of her throat and lied again. I'm sure. In the blink of an eye, the horror of what she may have done sent her heart into overdrive. What had she done? She remembered almost nothing. She remembered almost nothing after... She remembered almost nothing after kneeling beside the stranger and laying her hands on him, feeling the warmth of his blood on her skin. Memories came in a flash. Her healing surge of energy usually went only one way, into the person she touched. Into the person she touched. Into the person she touched. Yet last night... So this is way too long. Let's get rid of this. Into the person she touched. Yet last night had felt completely different. And whatever combination... Yet last night had felt completely different. And whatever combination they produced... And whatever combination they produced had tossed her memory into the trash can. If you do, or if you think of anything else, I hear you. Right there. Or if you think of anything else, anything else. I hear it. There it is. Or if you think of anything else. He paused for effect and handed her a business card. Give me a call. Chloe. That is mouth noise. We're going to get rid of that. So there should be roughly a second. Yeah. Chloe nodded, pulling the card from his tie. Pulling the card. Chloe nodded, pulling the... Where's that at? Right here? So this is another spot where I'll just, like, turn it down. Chloe nodded, pulling the... Chloe nodded, pulling the card... I'm going to turn it down even more. Chloe nodded, pulling the card from his tight grasp. He nodded, pulling the... Chloe nodded, pulling... Chloe nodded, pulling the card from his tight grasp, ignoring worry emanating from him. Ignoring worry emanating from him in waves. Emanating from him in waves. He had a good heart. He had a good heart, but she needed him to... He had a good heart, but she needed him to go away. But she needed him to go away now. So here is a change in POV. This is switches over to Sam, if I remember correctly. 0.938. It's fine. Approximately a second. She shut the door and leaned against... No, it's not a change of POV. Okay. Now. She shut the door and leaned... I'm kind of fine with the 1 second, my little 1 second rule there. I'm going to change it to approximately 3/4. Because it's changing from her thought process, from her thoughts to her actions, if that makes sense. That's how I like to do it. But she needed him to go away now. She shut the door and leaned against the thin... Okay. She shut the door and... She shut the door and leaned against the thin barrier. Leaned against the thin barrier. The thin barrier. Against the thin barrier. Against the thin barrier. Oh, I see you down there. Come here. Leaned against the thin barrier, a cold sweat peppering her forehead. How had a bad guy? There's something there that I'm not. I'm not seeing it. How had a bad guy slipped under her foolproof radar? This could not be happening. She'd always been extremely careful. She looked toward the stained spot on the floor. Looked toward the stained spot on the floor. The blood and water seeped through her blanket. Wouldn't she have known if it'd been even a little dangerous? She'd interpreted his lack of emotions. She'd interpreted his lack of emotions to be a result of his injuries, some kind of shock. Probably a sociopath. Her guts twisted. This kind of thing should never happen. She'd made a deal with herself to use her gift to help good people. Being an empath was otherwise an unbearable burden. What had gone wrong? Some freak with at least one attempted murder under his belt, and she couldn't even read one of his emotions? All the good she'd managed to do vanished like the man who'd disappeared from her home long. See, I can't look at OBS either because I can see it over there. Like the man who'd disappeared from her home long before she woke, almost 12 hours after he'd been brought in. As the full impact of last night's event washed over her, she fought the urge. As the full impact of last night's events washed over her, she fought the urge to vomit. She had healed a killer and put him back on the street. Healed a killer and put him back on the street. Healed a killer and put him back on the street. Sam stared out the window. See, this there should be a full second here because this is a change in POV, and there is a full second. Sam stared out the window of his rental car. Sam stared out the window of his rental car. Sam stared out the window of his rental car, a nondescript Toyota Camry, air conditioning blasting in a sweltering summer morning. 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 He liked summer generally. Baseball, ice cream. Baseball, ice cream, long days. Used to like them anyway. Okay, so we've been live 2 hours and 10 minutes and 14 seconds, and while I would love to just stick around and do nothing but chat and edit. I've sort of started getting in the zone, and I realize that I am not interacting with my broadcast as much as I could, should, would if I weren't so focused. So I am going to go ahead and end the broadcast now. I typically won't stream more than a couple of hours at a time because, frankly, I get a little bit exhausted. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and end it here and keep on finishing up the chapter. And yeah, then I may go ahead and record chapter 3 today because just I'm in the mood to work on these things. The book isn't due till March, but there are 21 chapters and the epilogue, as well as the I'm so angry at it because I skipped ahead and read it before I finished reading the book. Unspeakable is the third book in the series, and if you didn't listen to the first book, you're going to want to go and listen to the first book so that you will have a little bit of insight into who Sam is, where he started, who Chloe is, and where she started, and how Chloe's mother, who is in the third book, relates to... Oh, gosh. Why can't I do anything to this? How do I moderate chat from here? Because this is so annoying. Let me go here. Can I moderate chat from here? We're going to remove. We are also going to remove this. And okay, sorry about that. I can't stand that. It doesn't give me, so I don't have the chat options in OBS that I have on the dashboard on the on YouTube webpage rather than in OBS. So that's something that I'll have to figure out. But what was I doing here? You used to like them anyway. Oh yeah, I was saying bye. I was saying bye just as this spammer comes into chat and does whatever the spammer is doing. Sorry, not interested. I'll build my own community and content. Thank you very much for the offer, though. Anyways, thank you for those who stopped in and for anyone who is watching this later and for any of your feedback and offers of help. I am always happy and willing to learn something new as long as any criticism that is given is constructive and helpful. Think about it before you say it is very important. So I will see you next time I go live or next time there is a video posted. Don't forget to check me out over on TikTok at Christy Lynn VO. I think that's the right one. I'm going to open it and see.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning.
At Christy Lynn VO over on TikTok. When I go live here, I will post something over there, somewhere, saying that I'm going to be live here. If you're watching this after the fact and you've stuck around this long, tell me a little bit about yourself in chat. Are you a voice actor? Are you looking at getting into voice acting? What was the purpose for watching this video? Are you trying to learn to edit in Audition? If you have any questions that you think I may be able to help you with, please feel free to leave those questions in the comment box down below, and I am absolutely happy to help you in any way that I can. I am going to say after the fact of saying that I am not an expert. I am also new to this, but if there's anything that I can help someone with or that someone thinks they can help me with, I am absolutely happy to answer or listen, respectively. Thank you. Bye-bye.